This lesson is about the inline phrase elements for adding meaning to blocks of text. Open up your examples folder and open up the text folder within that and load up the phrase.html file in your text editor. And while you're at it, go ahead and load it in your browser as well. There we have that. The phrase elements are for adding meaning to your document. They are not for specifying a particular visual rendering. They're for adding meaning. In other words, if you have a paragraph of text and you mean for a certain word to be emphasized, you could use the EM element to emphasize a particular word. Then, when that word is displayed in a browser, it would be displayed in an emphasized manner, in this case italic, and that's the normal way to show emphasis in a browser. But if it's read, for example, in a browser for the visually impaired, it would be read with emphasis as well. The sentence may read, phrase elements can give meaning to your document. Whereas if you used the strong element instead of the emphasize element, use the strong element, it might be read, phrase elements can give meaning to your document, be read in a stronger way. This is very different than specifying italic or bold. When you specify italic or bold, those elements are for visual rendering only. They do not affect the meaning of a document for a browser that, say, renders in speech or in some method other than the visual rendering. So these elements are phrase elements as opposed to what we call the markup elements, and will be covered in a later lesson. Let's take a quick look at each of these and discuss what each of them means. EM is for emphasis, and that's rendered this way in a visual browser, but it means emphasis. And strong means strong. The Q element means quote, and you'll notice that in this browser, there are no quote marks around it. However, in the Mozilla browser, I believe there are. Let's take a look at that. That one has quotes. Now what's interesting is they're different than if you put the quotes in. They don't highlight that way because they are not text. They are phrase markup. If you meant for quotes, you could use the quote entity and they would be text, but these are not text. Likewise, the code has a monospaced for code, perhaps from a program or a programming language. ABBR, which means abbreviation, which really means nothing in the visual context. Likewise, acronym. However, in some browsers, acronym is rendered in small caps. It's not in any of these. I've seen another version of Mozilla where it's rendered in small caps. DFN is used for the defining instance of a new term, and you'll notice that that's rendered italic. KBD is for something that's typed on a keyboard. SAMP, which means sample, like a sample output from a computer screen, and that's also rendered in monospace. And VAR, which means variable, and it's used for variables in a programming language. So those are the phrase markup elements. And again, those are used to give meaning to the document, not to specify a particular visual rendering.